Good morning, everybody. Usually when we talk, whether we're on Zoom doing our inspirational talk or we're standing up here, we say, we're so happy to be with you. In truth, it's hard to say that right now. I'm happy to be in your company because of the comfort that we all give each other. But when you're standing in front of a group that's here live, or whether you're talking to a Zoom group, when you're addressing the issue that Sharon brought up before about the mass shooting on Tuesday at the Robb Elementary School, how do you say you're happy to talk about something? You're not happy to have to talk about it, but you know it needs to be talked about over and over again. And you know that it's not just talk, you know action needs to be taken. And again, as Sharon said, this is not a political view on my part. That's not what this is about. This is about honoring children and recognizing the hardships that these families are going through now with the loss of their children and the domino effect of all of this, because it doesn't just affect the children and their parents. It affects the grandparents, the aunts and uncles, the sisters, the brothers, and all of these people that now their lives will be totally changed. It changed a husband when his wife was mowed down, if that's the way you want to say it, because he had a massive heart attack and died from what they considered to be a broken heart and left 4 children. When does the agony of all of this end? So in thinking about this and feeling so sad because things are not getting better in this country. I mean, throughout the world, things are just not the way they should be. It's not the life that we maybe anticipated, but there's so much hardship. But when 21 people are mass murdered, when you send your child to school to learn, to develop their social skills, to feel safe while you go to work, how do you make sense of this kind of thing? There is no way to justify any of this. It's at the hands of somebody who's very emotionally disturbed. Well, yes, that's true. What are we doing to change that? It's just unthinkable at this point that this kind of thing keeps happening over and over and over again. And we stand here feeling helpless because what do we do? What can we do at this point? But I was thinking to myself, when our children, Ken and I were raising our children, their biggest fears were the ghosts in the closet and the monsters underneath the bed. And as long as you could open that closet and show them that there was nothing in there, they were fine. They felt at peace. You would take them underneath the bed and you would show them under the bed, no monsters. Smiles would come on their faces. You tuck them into bed, you hug them, and they would have a peaceful sleep, going into their sleep with a smile on their face. Now with these young people and what they're going through, are the ghosts in their closet the spirit of friends who have passed? Are the monsters underneath the bed terrorists, or I consider them terrorists, or gunmen who have mowed down their friends? When you listen to the reports of what has gone on, and an 11-year-old girl says, I had to take the blood of my friend off of her body and put it onto me to appear as though I was dead. There is something wrong with what has gone on in this world. And it's just scary. And it's not just children that are, these murders, these school attacks are just outrageous. But also, what was it, 10 days before, on the 14th of May, that people shopping in a Tops in Buffalo are killed. And they were not young people, they were people in their 60s. And I think there was one that was 32, out for a day of shopping. How often do my husband and I run into the store? Like, okay, we just need something, we're running in. Do you have to worry about these things all the time? And I kept thinking to myself, is safety an illusion? Is my being safe an illusion? Because, you know, I go about my days going into the grocery store, or you walk in someplace and you feel happy and you feel content and you're doing what you're meant to do. Am I safe? Am I really safe? Or is this an illusion I'm living with? And if it's an illusion, am I better off staying in that illusion? Or am I better off coming into a reality? Because I don't think you can live in that reality. I think that you would end up locking yourself indoors and never going anywhere. So in thinking about this, I went back over a couple of the talks that have been done over the last couple of months and year. And I came across Sharon's talk in September 26th, I think it was, of 21. And it began with her talking about how she had been with Julian and Beckham is his name, right? Mm. How she had been with them and Matt and Ashley, and they were in a car and they were driving along. And I don't know how the conversation started, but Sharon said she doesn't really listen to the news so much anymore because there's so much heartbreak there. There's so much stuff that you have to wrap your head around, and it takes you out of the place of wanting to live life to the fullest. So Ashley and Matt agreed with her. And I guess Julian, in his wisdom, said something to the effect of, well, Grandma and Mom and Dad, I know that you're bigger and older and you have certain things like work. And I'm kind of not paraphrasing this, but I'm just really, really happy. And Sharon's response to him was, I'm really glad you're happy. That's your job to be happy. I want you to be happy. It's every child's right to be happy. You know, it's not supposed to be where every time they enter a school, they're in fear of attacks. And yet this is what it's all become, that how do you get these kids back into a school? How do you tell them they'll be safe when even if they weren't in the classrooms that were being, attacked, that they know what went on and they heard what went on? And how do you say to them, it's okay to go back in that classroom? Even if they weren't part of that school in Texas, what about the schools around here? Whether it's from elementary schools up to high schools, how do you tell your kids it's safe to go back when you don't feel that it's safe for them to go back and you're not sure they're safe? So investigating this a little bit more, and you probably all know all the facts. There have been 27 school shootings since the beginning of January of 2022. 27, how can you even make sense of this? The amount of lives lost, I think it's been 169 lives lost since Columbine happened in 1999 to Robb Elementary, okay? 169. There was a quote, and I forget exactly who it was from, that said, it is more dangerous and deadly to be a student in school than it is to be a police officer on duty in this day and age. That you're probably safer being a police officer. What a thought. What an unbelievable thought. This has nothing to do with police training or anything else, but you know, when somebody is in that job, their life could be jeopardized. But for a child to go to school, and this is what they are subjected to. Another little boy who I believe was 9 years old talked about the fact that he heard the gunman walk in and say, it's time to die. Now that child made it out safely. How do you emotionally get through that? How are you ever the same once you hear something like that at the age of 9 or any age, even our age? How are you ever emotionally getting through the fact that somebody who did not know you thought it was your time to die? I don't know. Lately I feel strangulated. I really do. I think to myself, I've often said to Ken, I always thought the older I got, the more I would understand life. And the older I'm getting, the less I understand it. And the people that are here and the people that are on Zoom, you're all wonderful people and we all feel the same, but we know that there are so many people that just life is not important to them, or let me put it this way, their life is important to them, not necessarily other people's lives are important. It is heartbreaking. It is truly heartbreaking. So, thinking about all this and saying to myself, how does anything change? And I'm not sure. I don't have the answers. I don't think any of us have the answers, but we got to figure it out quickly. I was thinking back to Y2K. Now, I don't know if you're going to understand my thought pattern with this, but that's 22 years ago. And we were all afraid the world was going to come to the end because computers were going to shut down, airplanes were going to fall from the sky. And we couldn't go to the grocery stores because cash registers weren't going to work. And we thought that was the end of the world. Well, we lived through, that wasn't the end of the world. Do you know what the end of the world is? The end of the world is when you can't protect the next generation and keep them safe on the earth. And there's no way for the generations to go on. That's the end of the world. So again, what are we going to do about it? For a couple of years ago, before the pandemic, I worked as a volunteer in Florida for an elementary school, as a matter of fact. Elementary schools in Florida and in the South are very different than they are up here. They've had to be, they've done a lot of things to change stuff. But as you're walking to that school, there is a high gated fence that surrounds it. When you walk inside the building, you're walking only into a little front office that has like a nurse's, room, and also the principal, vice principal, and some of the secretaries. So that is all you see. And then you have got to go through these codes and codes as a visitor in order to get through the outer corridors because the classrooms are on an outdoor corridor. Every teacher has a lock around their neck, and nobody is allowed into these classrooms unless the door is, you knock on the door, somebody comes and sees you. The reason I'm saying this to you, do I think that's a wonderful way for these little ones to live? No, I don't. There's a sheriff's deputy that mans the front way when you come in. I don't think it's wonderful. It's not the way I remember my kids having to go to school, which was hard enough to get them to go to school because they didn't want to be there anyway. So, okay. But there was a time where I volunteered, and it would be sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon. They didn't really, specify when you had to come. And I was part of a kindergarten class. And I'm walking through the parking lot, and all of a sudden I see the main doors and the side gates and everything opening with a flux of people, children and teachers, and they're walking out with their hands on their heads. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of teachers here, so I'm not a teacher. I'm not telling you anything that you probably don't know, but I didn't know that this was a drill. All I knew was that these kids were being marched out of there with their hands on their head. Some of them were crying. Some of them would just look like they didn't, okay, this is a regular day. This is nothing different. They're marching out, hands on the head. Like I said, I didn't know it was a drill. And finally, one of the secretaries who recognized me said, Lynn, turn around, march to the end of the parking lot. And that's what they did with all the kids, as far away from the building as you could be. Okay? Took a couple of seconds for me to understand this was a drill. I have to tell you that during this time, it was the eeriest feeling I have ever had in my life. You didn't know what was real and what wasn't real. A little girl from the classroom that I was in started to cry, and I went and I went to put my hands on her shoulder, and I heard a voice yell out, and I still don't know if it was the deputy or who it was, get your hands off of her. And so again, I'm back like this. Okay, that was a drill. The reason I'm saying this to you is because imagine I found out within seconds that this was not real. But imagine for these children and these teachers who are going through this kind of thing, and it is real. It's enough to take you down to your knees, even, under good circumstances of it being not a real thing. So, okay. That happened. I talked with the teacher. She told me from now on what to expect if it was a drill, whatever. A week later, I think it was, maybe a little bit longer, I get a call from her on my phone as I'm trying to get to the school, to the parking lot. And she says to me, Lynn, do not come to the school. Now, this young teacher, Gina, who I became very, very close with, said, we are in lockdown. There was a man who was being chased by car and ended up abandoning the car right in front of the school. And of course, they go into complete lockdown. She's now calling me with 60 kids. There were 3 teachers and 20 kids each from the cafeteria storage room, which was not very big, in pitch black, with kids trying to keep from sobbing, screaming, and peeing in their pants, which did happen to some of them. That was what she experienced. Lynn, don't come here. And she's doing that with her phone. After that, and I don't remember if I came later in the day, it was 45 minutes they were in that closet. And after I came to the school, and she said to me, I hope I never have to go through that again. It was the most frightening thing I've ever been through. And I'm not prepared for this. I'm a teacher, but I'm not prepared for this. So in saying these things to you, in both those scenarios, they turned out to be, thank God, okay. But in the situations that are going on lately, there's not any okay. To go further with this, and I don't want to be overly graphic, something I heard from a pediatric surgeon, trauma surgeon, said that they were prepared to have quite a number of people sent. It was, I think, a hospital out of San Antonio sent to them. The numbers did not exist because when you shoot an assault weapon at a child, it's all gone. Internal, everything is gone. So again, I say, to all of you, there's so much sadness going on. Some of you have grandchildren, some of you have young children. All we want to do is protect our kids and know that they're going to live a happy life. And a happy life doesn't only mean not getting obviously shot at. It means not having physical, emotional trauma because of all of these things. And it just is so hard to comprehend all of this. So kind of what I thought of when I was reading this was, how are parents feeling now after all of this has happened there? My God, how do you go on with this? How do you really have any joy in your life after this? And there was one woman who talked about, she went to a memorial service, I guess, in the downtown area. And as she's putting flowers at this memorial, she has she has a set of twins, 8-year-old boys. And she said, I have to send them back to school, and I don't know how I feel about sending them back. I'm scared to send them back. So she went and she kind of surveilled, is that the right word, the school, to see what windows she would have to break into in her children's classrooms to get to them if she needed to get them. She drew hearts with marker on the top of their hands so that she could identify them. She said, if the worst scenario happened. Okay, I'm just going to, kind of pull it together and saying, the suffering that is going on is just, parent, child, relatives, friends, it's something that's beyond comprehension. So in coming, to the end of what I wanted to say to you is that I don't have any solutions. And, I guess there are some, right, that we can think about, but our hearts have to be there. And while we're sitting here, while you're on Zoom, we've got to send out that heart connection to all these people that have lost their children, whose families have been devastated, and say, we're going to do better. We're going to try to figure out a way that this is never going to happen again so they can send their other children to school. Because once you've had that happen in your family, how do you send your other children to school? At that point, I think I'd be saying, Ken, we need to homeschool. How do you send them? But we need to do better by these families. We need to do better by young people. It's not a fair world anymore. And I came across this quote, and who better to have a quote like this than Joseph P. Kennedy? And at first I thought it was a John F. Kennedy quote, but Joseph Kennedy, the father of John F. Kennedy and Robert Kennedy, and all the losses in his family, all the children that he lost, maybe not as young children, but as children. And he says, when the young bury the old, time heals the pain and sorrow. But when the process is reversed, the sorrow remains forever. You know, I can't think of any truer words. I can't even comprehend what it must be like to bury your child. I can't comprehend, even if it's from disease, from illness, from accidents. Terrible, terrible, terrible. But to know that your child was mowed down, and that's the only word I can use, in that kind of school safe setting is just, I keep saying it's just not something that I can comprehend or any of us can comprehend. So in bringing this to you today, I didn't tell you anything you didn't already hear, you didn't already read, you don't already feel in your heart. I think I'm just crying out to all of us on Zoom here. What do we do to make this a safer place for these children? It's just something that you say to yourself, you know, there's death and we know as spiritualists life goes on, but you know what? That doesn't matter. Even if you're the most religious Catholic, the most devout Jewish person, or you're a spiritualist, and we know life goes on, that doesn't help at the moment that you get the news that your child was killed. So, you know, in saying that and in talking to all of you, I hope that great minds come together, whether it's our politicians, whether it's us, whether we all figure out a way to try and stop all of this that's going on, because I know Ken and I do not have grandchildren, but I hope someday we do, and I hope we never have to know the sorrows of what these people have gone through, because it's unbelievable to me. So I ask you all, Zoom or here, to please, as Sharon said before, send out your prayers. I mean, prayers do work. They have to work. They have to do something to elevate what's going on at this stage of the game. So thank you for listening. I know your hearts are as heavy as mine. I know all of us are feeling this and just hoping that this can be the end of all of this, these terrible, terrible massacres, if that's what you want to call it. So thank you for listening.